Welcome to the Success Sensei podcast for anyone interested in success, happiness, and balance. We'll teach you how to be a black belt at life. And now, your host, former professional fighter, multiple world champion, entrepreneur, and investor, Robert Devane.
Bowing in. This is Robert Devane, the Success Sensei, helping you to win at life one kick and punch at a time. Episode 348. Your mind is making you ill.
It's the Success Sensei podcast main event.
Your mind is making you ill. Don't believe me? Well, have a listen to this. We all have a touch of what we're going to talk about. And it absolutely is going to affect you. And it's something that you need to look at, manage, or change. Now, I'm not talking about if your partner has told you that you have a sick mind. That means something totally different and not what this episode is about. We are, I suppose, mainly specifically talking about psychosomatic disorders. What is that, I hear you say? Well, we'll clarify whether you know or whether you don't know. It makes the episode a hell of a lot easier if we can clarify things as we go along. And it's basically if the cause are, aggravated illness or even an injury is caused or aggravated by a mental factor, I suppose, such as stress or just your mind in general. So it's your mind exasperating, exaggerating, aggravating, or causing a particular illness or sickness or even an injury. That's not you, I hear you say. That you're not affected by this, but we all are to varying degrees. And I'll prove it to you. We all believe our own narrative, the story that we're telling ourselves, the definitions, the boxes that we put ourselves into. You don't like other people putting you into a box, and yet you do it to yourself all the time. You just have to catch yourself doing it. As they say, diagnosis is 90% a cure. So immediately you can be defensive. Go, that doesn't mean I don't suffer from any psychosomatic disorders. My mind isn't making me ill. But if you say things like, I always suffer from ... each autumn/fall or winter I get sick. I always get a cold or a flu this time of year. Or each spring or summer I get an experience and suffer from hay fever. And when it gets me good. Or I'm prone to sore throats, headaches, sinus, muscle cramping, poor circulation, earaches, chronic fatigue, injuring joints, bruising, etc., etc., etc. Choose your poison. We all have some type of a belief that we're weak in a certain area or prone to something. And we are forming our own truths. And then we're proving ourselves right, which isn't a good thing. It's not good to prove yourself right about a truth that you've formed about, being susceptible to a specific condition. It's like with injuries I see all the time in my job. When you're training adults, martial arts, fitness, kickboxing, adults always have injuries, number one, and adults always do get injured, number two. Minor injuries, but everybody makes a mountain out of a molehill. Everybody thinks that their minor injury isn't even a minor injury. I suppose the latest is, when they don't believe it's a minor injury, so they go get the doctor's opinion and they're told you've got soft tissue damage. A lot of people are happy when they hear that because it validates what they thought, it validates their injury. But what does soft tissue damage mean? It's a bruise. It is a minor injury. It's so easy to exaggerate, to increase the imagined severity of an injury, and it's not doing you any favors for rehabilitation or just for quicker healing. There is a hypochondriac in all of us. What is hypochondria? What is a hypochondriac? It is being preoccupied with having or getting sick and / are injured. Again, we are all susceptible. If you're very self-aware and if you're honest, you will have experienced it previously in your life, and therefore, hopefully, with the correct recognition, you'll be able to catch yourself and correct the behavior in the future for your own betterment. There's no point in wallowing in an injury. There's no point in exaggerating an injury. Where's the benefit for other people's sympathy? What's the point of that? You want to heal as fast as you can and continue going forward. The only answer to and the only path to success is to keep moving forward. Obviously, you don't want to get sicker if you are genuinely sick and genuinely injured, but your frame of mind dictates immensely to the amount of times you get sick or injured, the severity of that sickness and or injury, and how quick you recover, how quick you heal. So it doesn't make sense to have a strong mind and stop catching yourself. Stop trying to prove to yourself that it's worse than it actually is. Stop letting the sickness or the injury become the stressful factor that is increasing the psychosomatic disorder. If we're saying that stress is a major factor for psychosomatic disorders, that is, your mental factors, your mental health, your mental state of mind causing, are certainly aggravating these. If that it's a perpetual cycle, basically, right? So the stress leads to the sickness leads to the stress, and the stress leads back to the sickness or more sickness. The biggest mistake that everybody is guilty of. Everybody has done this, some more so than others. And by the way, before I get into this, right, before I get into the proof of how we are all hypochondriacs, how we all have psychosomatic tendencies, before I get into this, it's not just people who are weak-minded or anything like that. That's not what we're saying. There's many fighters. I know many tough fighters have touches of this to varying degrees. A couple of the toughest fighters I know have this in abundance. And I was surprised initially, but I guess when I went through the process of fighting and competing myself, it is amazing how the closer to a fight you get, the more you worry. And I'm sure it's true for all athletes. The closer to the event of the competition, when you're relying on yourself to be as healthy as possible to perform at your highest level, that is when you worry the most about, becoming under the weather, getting sick or getting injured, and nearly attracting it to yourself. When you're there thinking, I've done my prep, I've done my training, I've done everything is ready. All I need now is, if I get sick, if I get a cold or a flu, it could seriously knock me back. It's the only thing that could get in my way and affect me. And guess what? You become superstitious in the process, and the fact that you've even thought about getting sick, you then convince yourself that can lead to you getting sick. And again, this perpetual cycle. So that's very, very common in people who are tough. It's not, only weak people. Only weak people's minds make them ill. But the biggest mistake, here's a proof. Here's proof that we all do this. How many people, put up your hands, or how often, how many days a week do you, or this imaginary person, so you don't have to think about it, imagine yourself in the scenario, but how often do you or other people that wake up and the first thing they do is the am I unwell test. So imagine you wake up first thing in the morning, doesn't matter if you've had a lot of sleep, very little sleep, first thing you do is am I unwell test. It's your first thoughts. Am I stiff? Am I tired? Do I have a sore throat? Let me check. Is it a sore throat? Do I have a headache? immediately waking up and looking for something negative. Whatever you look for, your chances of finding it greatly increase. So if you're looking for the negative, you're looking for negative more often, you're going to find it more often. So look for the positive. But if you're waking up, I know people that wake up on a regular basis and they do the check and, oh yeah, I knew I'd have a sore throat. Oh yeah, I knew I'd be tired. Yeah, I knew I'd be, put the phone onto airplane mode. Sorry for the interruption. Knew I'd be sick. I knew I'd have a sore throat. I knew I'd have a headache straight away. Where's the paracetamol? Where's the Nurofen? That it's not doing you any favors, that am I unwell test. Your first thoughts waking up in the morning is to check how sick am I, or what sickness am I actually suffering from, when you're most days perfectly fine, perfectly normal. Don't be willing it or wishing it on yourself. I'd like to think that I'm somebody who's strong-minded. Yeah, I know my friends, my family will say stubborn. That's fine. I'm definitely non-conforming. And yet, I had a scenario. I won't get into the details because it'll be too long an episode. But I was misdiagnosed with a condition. And as I've just stated, I think I'm strong-minded, strong-willed, stubborn, non-conforming. I didn't even believe the diagnosis at first. But eventually I did start to believe the diagnosis. And I developed the phantom pains that accompanied the misdiagnosis, which, if you haven't figured out where the story ends pretty nicely for me, it was a misdiagnosis. So it was a mistake. And yet here I am, somebody that knows that your mind can make you ill. And here I was experiencing the phantom pains in conjunction with the misdiagnosis, which went away immediately upon confirmation that it was just one big mistake. So if that can happen to someone that's stubborn, strong-willed, strong-minded, it can happen to people that aren't as strong-minded and aren't as stubborn and aren't as strong-willed. In other words, it happens to absolutely everybody. We all let our mind affect our health in some way, some shape or form. If you can mitigate that as much as possible, it is absolutely one of the greatest ways you can increase your physical health, by changing your beliefs. How do you change your beliefs? Well, through meditation, through visualization. See yourself as a person that doesn't get sick. See yourself as a person that if they do get sick, look, you can't deny sickness. You're going to be sick, but you mightn't have to at the frequency that maybe you have in the past. Some of it is unnecessary. Not all of it is, necessary sickness or illness or injury. Meditate, visualize, see yourself as somebody who is healing their immune system. See yourself as somebody with a strong immune system. With proper meditation, visualization, you'll probably make better choices throughout the day as well. Once you start identifying as somebody with a solid immune system, you're probably going to start trying to sleep better and eat better and make sure you hydrate a bit better. Make sure you have a balanced diet or whatever supplements you think is going to help with that process. So meditation, visualization, and absolutely the second point is change your inner dialogue. How do you do that? Well, as soon as your brain identifies as something negative, do not let yourself away with that. So as soon as your brain says, every winter I get a bad flu or a bad cold, you have to correct that and then replace it. So you have to correct it and you go, well, that's not true. Every winter I don't. Every single winter for your whole life, that hasn't happened. And it's not always a bad one. And, it doesn't always happen. And replace it with, from here on in, I'm going to look after myself better and I'm going to prevent it from happening. And, change your mindset, change that internal pattern. Even if it means for a couple of seconds, blankly looking at a wall when the thought came into your mind because you're having an internal argument, that's fine. Do what you have to do. Don't let yourself away with it. Once you do it often enough And once you often enough correct yourself and don't let yourself away with that negative self-talk, you will form the habit of not even bothering. You will actually become more positive. You will actually have more self-belief that your immune system is stronger, that you are healthier, that you can fight infection quicker, that you are resilient. People say all the time, I'm too busy to be sick. They're the ones that invariably don't get sick that often, because they believe that. They genuinely believe it. And here's another one for you, right? So if you're saying to yourself, I'm too busy to get sick, and you don't get sick, that's absolutely brilliant. And then I'm sure you've heard the story. You go on holidays, and what's the first thing to happen? You get sick. So you identify as someone who, I'm too busy to get sick. So then I go on a holiday, and what's the first thing that happens? I have time to get sick, so I get sick. So all you have to then do in that case is reprogram your brain and don't believe the bit about where you get sick on your holidays. And then you'll never suffer. Makes sense? So you're too busy to be sick, don't get sick, and don't identify as someone then, when they have the time to be sick, does get sick. You never get sick. You're more resilient than that. Hopefully it sparked something in your mind. Hopefully I've caught you out with something, and you've identified how in some area of your life you may have allowed your mind to run away slightly and inflict unnecessary belief about your resiliency or your physical health, your proneness to whatever conditions. I am convinced that we're all stronger than we realize. Everybody is stronger than we realize. We are tougher than we realize, even though, that, as I said, that toughness isn't directly correlated with how tough someone acts. The toughest acting people, some of the toughest acting people I know, as I stated earlier, have been very prone to be wishing illness and sickness on themselves. So the way you look at proper, toughness, of real toughness, needs to be look, I'm going down a different rabbit hole. That's for a whole other podcast. Get your mind right. Have good, strong self-belief. Believe your immune system is strong. Believe that you're doing the right things to prevent any unnecessary illness and any unnecessary injury. Don't wake up first thing in the morning and do that unwell check. Wake up with something positive. You program your mind and you already, that's what I was trying to say before I went off on the tangent. You already know, you already have the answers to the majority of things in your life. It's just about bringing them forward and allowing yourself to be that person. You are definitely tougher mentally, physically and spiritually than you're giving yourself credit for. Thank you for listening. I'm Robert Devane, the Success Sensei. Life is a fight you can enjoy and win. Bowing out.
This has been the Success Sensei, fighting the winning fight. So add us, subscribe, like, and comment. Keep those hands up and keep moving forward.